Now that you've heard the big society lecture, it's important to discuss before we move on some key lecture and note taking tips which will stand you in good stead in any lecture that you go to in the future. First of all and foremost, always attend lectures which are provided for you. It's a bit of a misconception that lectures aren't that important at university level learning. It is true that lectures aren't mandatory. Usually there's not a register taken at a lecture, but it's worth bearing in mind that lectures provide you with the base, the foundation knowledge which you need, to go into maybe classes, seminars, university workshops, and also bearing in mind that you'll have essays, presentations to deliver when you're at university. The lecture provides you with a base knowledge. You have to think of the lecture very much in terms of the best part of an hour, maybe 2 hours worth of the lecturer delivering his piece to you. So this is time for you to take notes, sit back, listen to the lecture, and then from there go and do your own reading to build on this base of knowledge. So if you don't attend the lecture, you're shooting yourself in the foot right away in terms of being an independent learner. Once you've got to the lecture, once you've actually found the room and got there, it's important in the very first instance not to be intimidated by the lecture hall. It's a key point that many of you coming from college or coming straight from school, or even returners to university level education, lecture halls can be intimidating places. They can be very, very sort of challenging environments the way they look, quite intimidating. They can be ascending, the old style sort of lecture halls, or they could even be in a small room. But if you've not been to a lecture before, it can be quite an intimidating place. Once you've done that and you've got to the lecture, get yourself comfortable. You don't want to be sitting there 55 minutes through a lecture uncomfortable. Perhaps it might be next to a heater underneath an air conditioning vent, or it could even be just beside someone who's quite noisy and really annoying. Once this takes place and the lecture begins, the fun work begins, so to speak. This is where you have to learn how to take notes. If you're already in education, you will be taking notes at an advanced level, there's no denying it. But within a lecture, you have so many different types of lecturer. You might have a handout, you may have a PowerPoint presentation, or it may just be you listening to the actual lecturer speak, him or herself. If that is the case, it's almost impossible to take down every word which the lecturer speaks. So if you sit there, you're comfortable, you've attended, and you go to write down every single word that the lecturer says, it will not happen. Just think about what you've just seen. The lecture which I delivered, which was just a mini, slow-paced lecture. Even at that pace, it would have been quite impossible for you to take down every word. So you can imagine in a university setting where the lecture is 55 minutes long at the very minimum. There's other note-taking skills, some of which you might be aware of, some of which you might come into contact with. You've got the use of mind maps, where it's based on the old-fashioned spidergram. You put the key point in the middle of the page and you just spike out ideas from that. You've also got you can put things into columns, into subheadings. There's bullet points. There's even using different coloured pens, although it is a bit difficult during a lecture as it's taking place. Once you become aware of whichever note-taking style works for you, the most important thing is to stick with it. Get that continuity going, so as for all of your lectures, you're more and more comfortable in that learning environment. One of the other key points is that once you've went to the lecture, you've took in the lecture, you've got your knowledge, you found out which note-taking works for you, you're more than halfway there to being a good attender of lectures. You have to organise your notes. There's no point, and it's actually absolutely useless, and I know because I've done it myself, if you take thousands of notes in lectures, you take thousands of bullet points, and then you leave the lecture, and you lose your paper, you lose the paper that you took your notes on, or you haven't dated them, you haven't given them a title. So for instance, if it's a history lecture, you haven't given the title of the history class and you haven't dated it, or whatever lecture it is you're attending. And before you know it, after 2 months into your course, these bits of paper are scattered everywhere. One of the best ways to do this is easily just to go into any stationery store or any shop really. Get yourself some colour-coded files, some colour-coded tabs to put at the top of pages, and just get yourself into a culture of organising your notes. It will stand you in good stead, especially as your course goes on, 12 weeks into your first semester or whatever time may be, and it's exam time, and all your lecture notes are relevant to your exam. And if you've organised those notes, it takes a lot of time out of your actual revision time schedule, so it's more beneficial for you at the end. And plus, you rely on these notes to formulate arguments, you rely on these notes to formulate essays and opinions for your essays. So if they're organised, that's half the battle done already. And also, it's a good point just to remember that when you're in lectures, they aren't always the most enjoyable atmospheres. You will, as a human being, get bored at some point. You may want to fall asleep, you may want to ignore what the lecturer's saying that might not be applicable to you, but just remember, try and stay focused, try and stay centred on the task in hand, and take as much notes as you feel possible, and don't bother or don't worry about what other people are doing around you. It's inevitable, you'll see people in lectures who will be on laptops, they'll be taking notes that way, or people in lectures where they'll be clicking pens and doing the really annoying stuff. Try and just ignore that and focus on what you like and your actual lecture and note-taking styles. And just think, whilst I'm speaking about this, about the lecture you just heard, was there anybody around you annoying you? Was there anybody around you putting you off or not taking notes? So these are the things you need to pick up on as you go to lectures at university level.